So in this video, we're going to talk about PowerApps, customizing your SharePoint list form, and getting it to look a little bit more spiffy.
Okay, so in this video, we're actually going to go through the intro to PowerApps. Now, PowerApps, if you're looking at my list here, is the application or the tool that allow you to customize the forms in this list. So just real quick on some vocabulary or some terminology. So what we have here is a list, and this is a standard list of the of equipments, and this is something I threw together pretty quickly. And when you click on this item, this is what you would say a view or a form. Is read only, so it only allows you to see the information. When you click edit, then it allows you to edit the information. So that's two pieces of the form. And the third piece of the form is when you're going to create an entry within the list. And this is going to be similar to edit, but all the fields are blank, allowing you to create something from new. So PowerApps, in short, will allow you to take a standard form, a view form, or edit form, or new form, for a particular item from looking boring like this to something that's more enhanced like this. And this is what we're going to create in this video. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we need to do to customize the form is to go to, you can open up any item, it really doesn't matter. You can open up an item, hit customize from the top right here, or you can just go to PowerApps and hit customize form. Now we can also create a application or an app, and this will run on your tablet, your phone, or even in the browser as an app, and you don't even have to come to the list itself. But we're not going to do that. We're going to do that later in the lesson. So for right now, we're going to customize the form. So you click customize forms, and what this is going to do, this is going to bring up the PowerApps Studio. And the cool thing about PowerApps Studio, you don't have to install anything. It's just going to launch in the Studio right here in your browser, which is really handy. And because you clicked on it from within the list, it's going to automatically create all the fields from that list as a starting point for your PowerApps form. And this is our starting point here. So just really quick, let me just do a quick navigation or tour on the Studio, because there's so many options here. We're definitely not going to cover even 10% or even 5% of these now, but we're going to cover some of the most critical ones that are needed to really enhance the look and feel of our form. So the first thing you want to do is over here on the left, this is going to give you kind of like an exploded view of all the elements on your screen. So you have a screen container, and that's going to be this white background here. And then within the screen, you're going to have a form, and that's what you can see. You can resize this form and all this other good stuff. The form is critical in this piece because the form is going to bring in all the site columns or the columns that we just saw from a particular list. So any column that we're displaying in that list is going to be displayed here. Within that column, you're going to have what they call data cards. And as I select the different data cards, you'll see them highlighted here on the canvas. And that's going to allow you to manipulate any one of these cards once they're selected. You can resize them. Sometimes they're weird to resize. But if you resize them, what it's going to try to do is try to put everything on one row as much as possible. And I'm just trying to resize this to get everything on the row when it's not being friendly right now. And these can be pretty tedious. There it is. These can be kind of tedious to work with, but it just takes some time to get used to and understanding how these different resizing guides work. Okay, but yeah, so within the card, you're going to have your label, and this is just going to be the name of the field, and then you're going to actually have the field itself, and this is the one that will hold information or display information depending on where you are when you go to add an item. Again, the three really modes or three forms that any item will have is a new form, which allows you to put in information because you're creating an item, you're creating a new item, or it's the edit form, which allows you to modify an existing item, or it's going to be the view form, which is going to show you the details of the item in read-only mode. So right now what we're going to do, we're going to customize this one form And this form is already wired up to give you those 3 different looks. Okay, and then in a future video, I can show you how you can split those looks into their 3 different views or 3 different forms and customize them individually. So that way we can do something really, really fancy. So for right now, let's go ahead. Again, just to recap, what we want to do, we want to get this boring looking form on the left to look really enhanced and nice looking as we have it on the right. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And as we're building this, we're going to touch on a lot of different things. So the first thing we need to do, let's just keep this right here on the right, so that way we can always track where we are, what needs to happen. And I'm going to just tackle this from the top down. So the first thing we need to do is add in this header piece. Now to add in the header piece, the first thing you have to do is, I know I said first thing you have to do like 6 times already. The one thing you have to do is to resize the form, just to kind of give you some breathing room here at the top. And we're going to inject go to insert here and go to icons. We're going to inject a rectangle. So we scroll all the way down to the bottom to where we get to the rectangle, and we just inject it there. And basically all we need to do is resize it. There's no science to this, so just get something that right around the width that we need, or the height that we need. And we need to go ahead and turn this guy black. So let's go here to the fill. These are called fill colors. Anytime you see a bucket, that's going to be a fill color. You may also see one with an A. That's just going to be the font color. So if I had text inside of here, I can change the fill color and the font color, which is the color of the letters. So our fill color, we want that to be black. And then what we have to do is put an icon here and then a label. So let's go ahead and drop in our icon. You don't have to follow this directly. You can choose whatever icon you want. Now these icons are going to come over with some default color, and they may not be exactly what we want, but you can just highlight the icon, switch over to the home tab, and then here under font color, you can use this color to change the icon to whatever you want. So we want white, or you can do a little like an off bluish, anything that's fancy, right? Anything that's not boring. Okay, so once we have our icon, let's go ahead, switch back over here. We need to put a label in here. So just go ahead, insert, and then select label. And that's going to give us a text area. Now the cool thing about this label, now here's a couple of things I want to highlight. When I move this up on top of the rectangle, and you can stack these, right? You can put layers on top of layers on top of layers. So really we're only dealing with 2 layers. So we have the black rectangle in the back, and then on top of that we're going to have our icon, and we're going to have our label sitting on top of it. Now I can layer any icon that I bring in over the form, right? And understand that the form is going to have all these elements. But one thing I can't do, I can't stack elements on top of elements. And an element that's in this data card must stay within that data card, and you cannot overlap data cards. Now you can fit as many as you want on the same row, but you can't stack them as you can with labels and icons and things are outside of the form. And if you look at this hierarchy here, it really just kind of highlight what you can and cannot do, right? So here's my label, and I can float that whatever, but the form itself is like another instance. So you can see label, icon, rectangle, and then the form, and then if you expand it out, you see all the data cards. You expand it out, you see all the various elements within that data card. And the hierarchy is key, because sometimes when you get to customizing, there's certain things you want to do, and if you understand this hierarchy, you will see what the restrictions are and what the flexibilities are and the like. Okay, so let's go ahead and move quickly through this. We want to change, I'm going to select my label, I'm going to change this to, I'm going to eyeball it, let's just say 20, and I'm going to make it bold, and I'm going to make it white, just to kind of give it a lot of contrast, right? And then you want to come up here and resize it. And I'm going to keep resizing until I see the purple, because then that lets me know right there in the middle of that rectangle. This is starting to look odd, so I'm going to go ahead and make this white as well. All right, so now I need to do is change the text to this label. So to do that, you have the property pane. So for each element that you select, it has its own property pane. And what I'm looking for is the text property pane for this label. That's the color. Scroll down until I get to the T's and this text. And now you can name it whatever you want, as long as it's within the double quotes. And I think we said equipment request form, right? Equipment request form. All right, and you can see it's starting to wrap, and we need this definitely on a single row. So let's stretch that the guiding fields or element to stretch out across the row. Now this is not looking exactly what we have here. Let me take the bold off. Yeah, that's a little bit more elegant. It's a little boring because it's white and black, but let's continue building this out and then see where we land. If we need to adjust the color, we can. All right, so now we have our header in place. We use a different icon, which is fine. And now we need to move the photo, right, the photo field from the bottom all the way to the top. Now the best and easiest way to reorder these is to select the form and then come over here where it says layout, select the layout. And right now we have vertical selected. Now you have two options for the layout. It can be horizontal or it can be vertical. So regardless of what it's set to, just go make sure you select the form first, right? Because if you select anything else, you notice that these dynamically change based on the asset or the element that you have selected. So when you select the form, you're going to get the layout option, and then you just select horizontal or vertical, whichever it is. Now let's go ahead and switch this back to vertical because that's our layout. And vertical, the difference between vertical and horizontal is where it puts the label in comparison to the form element inside of the data card. So horizontal, they're going to put them side by side. In vertical, they're going to stack them top to bottom, right? So photo is stacked on top of the photo element. And that's the only difference between these layout types. So now what we want to do is just go ahead and reorder this. So I'm going to select photo and basically just drag it to the top. Now sometimes it's hard to get to the tippy top, so if you drag it to the top and it seems not to land at the top, get it to the second position and then drag the top one down, and in the end that will kind of get it to the top. All right, let's keep moving. So now I want to this took me a little bit to figure out, because when I resize this, my image icon seems to be aspect ratio, meaning that it's not really stretching, it's not really filling the containing box, and that's because I need to select a different property. So you want to make sure that the image value or data card value is selected, and then go to the property pane and then do image position. By default, it's going to be set to fit. We want to change that to fill, and now that's going to fill up the area of the bounding box. Okay, so what we're going to do is just go ahead and keep stretching this up. You can move it, you can stretch it with the guiding boxes, and you want to keep stretching until you kind of get the area that you're targeting filled up. And that's about right for us. Now, of course, we have this white gap between the header and the image, and we need to get rid of that. And that's going to be the form container, right? And it's going to be the form container, because we slid that down to give us some working space to build that. So now that we have the header in place, let's just take that form container and slide it. See, I'm moving things that shouldn't be moved. Anytime that you do something that you make a mistake, because sometimes if you drag something that inadvertently moves something you didn't intend to move, just do a Control Z, right? And you can do Control Z all the way from the last time you saved. So if you go too far, do Control Y, and that will redo it. So all your steps are kind of like stored in history, and you can navigate through those between Control Z and Control Y, right? So Control Z is undo, Control Y is redo. All right, so let's do. Let me start here. Let me restart here. All right, so let me stretch this out. I'm going from side to side, top to bottom. All right, and then I'm gonna scooch it to the top. Scooch. All right, cool. All right, so now what you want to do is select your form. And let me get in the white area so that way I don't inadvertently move something, one of these elements, and drag. No, it won't let you drag and drop. So you have to stretch it out. So grab the guiding container and move it up to about right here. You want to butt it up right there. All right, so that's perfect. All right, cool. Now sometimes and that's the thing, like you just have to keep playing around with this stuff. Sometimes you can move it, right? Sometimes you have to use the guiding lines to resize it, but either one works. All right, cool. All right, so what's next? So now we have our image stretched to the top. That looks good. Then we have title, we have description. It seems like those didn't change too much. And then we have location and cost on the same line. And I've already done that because I was resizing location. Now, when you resize these, it seems intuitively you should grab the right one and push it over, but when you do that, it doesn't move, which is odd. You have to grab the left one and slide it, and as you move the left guiding line to the right, it moves the right over. Okay, so I'm gonna keep doing this until I kind of get both of these on the same row without too much white space. All right, so that's pretty much it. All right. So now what I want to do is get this background color in there. You see that fancy blue? Well, that's just an image, just a background image that we add. And we have to add that to the screen. So it seems like you want to add it to the form, but you actually want to add it to the screen, mainly because I don't think the form has an image option. So select screen, and then right here where it says background image, you can select. If you don't have any images uploaded to the studio, it's going to ask you to select one. So I can go to image, and I've already got this, but let me show you how I went about grabbing it so you can grab it too. Just go to Google, do a search on abstract backgrounds, right? And switch over to the image tag once you're on the Google search results. And then change your tools and your size to large, because you need a really high-res image for this to really work. Now you can scroll through here and select whatever you want. It really doesn't matter. It's a matter of style and preference. And I'm gonna just go with this one. Like you don't want it too busy, right? Because that takes away from the detail of the form. But then again, you don't want it too boring because you can just use a solid color versus an image. So you want something that's gonna add a little pizzazz, but not too much, right? Let's just do this one here, right? And this is downloading. I'm just waiting for these gray download bars to finish before I right click and say save as. And this is taking way longer than it should. Let me try it again. All right, so then I just right click and say save image as. And again, just make sure you're saving it to an area where you can easily pick it up. I have a scratch folder on my desktop, and this is usually where I save things that I grab from the desktop. So I'm gonna just save it there. Go back to my PowerApps Studio, select add an image, and then go ahead and grab that background, and it's going to drop it in. Now it's going to be weird at first because just like our photo element, by default is set to fit. Well, we need this to be set to fill, and that's going to go ahead and stretch it all the way out to where it needs to be. All right, so that's actually fantastic. It looks good. All right, so let's do. All right, so now that we put that in there, our labels are starting to get lost in the design because there's not a lot of contrast. These labels are best fit if they're white. So let me show you. So what you want to do, let's zoom in so that way we're clear on what we're changing and make sure we're changing the right thing. So if you hit the plus sign, all right, so you see how title is really barely noticeable. Let's just change that and make sure you're on your home tab, and then from the color selection box, just go ahead and drop them to white, and that'll give you enough contrast to where things can really start to pop. All right, and I think for the most part that's it, right? Oh, and then we have to add in creative bytes. But for right now, before we get too far along, let's just make sure we're able to save this and see what this looks like. So what you want to do is right here at the very top, it says back to SharePoint. Click on that, and you should get an option that says save and publish. Click save and publish, sit back, relax, and let it do its thing. And what it's doing is taking all your changes from Studio and pushing them up to SharePoint. And now when you select an item, you have your custom form, cool background, you have your image, and you have your text fields, right? Now, the thing about this is this gives you the false impression that you can change this, right? And this really is just a white bounding box behind it. That's what's giving you the sense that you can change it. But then when you get to edit, that's when things actually become editable. So you can come in here, type in yada, 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 come up here, hit save. Well, let's just, before I click save, Amazon Fire Stick, you see I'm changing the description here. Click save, and then the description gets updated, right? And if you click on another one, Bluetooth, looks good. Fire TV, looks good. Looks good. And my images are getting chopped off because I don't have enough height there to really show the entire image, right? So we probably want to change that a little bit. All right, so it looks good. All right, there's probably a couple things that we can do to enhance this a little bit more, but we'll see. Let's see how much time we have. First thing we want to do is drop in our, we call this I'm sorry, let's make sure our new form works. So you click new. Yep. And here's another issue that we have. So you click new, there's no way to drop in the URL for the photo. In our original form, in the boring form, it actually had a field to drop that in. But in the next video, when I show you how to split these out into 3 separate screens, again, the new, the edit, and then the view only, I'm going to show you how to split those off, and then we can get really fancy because we don't have to accommodate for or account for in our view field when things need to be edited, and then in our edit field, we can hide certain things that are only available in the new form or things along those lines. So right now, because we're dealing with one form for all 3 scenarios, we kind of have our hands tied on what we can and cannot do, but we can get a lot more fancier here in a little bit. All right, so let me go ahead and click cancel. What do we want to do? Let's stretch this image piece out so that way we can see more of the image here. And then we also want to add in our auditing box, which really just tracks who created the item, who was the last person to modify the item, and the date and time it was actually modified, so we can add those in. All right, so let's go back to our PowerApps tab, hit Customize, and this is going to drop in. I think this is the one thing that kind of irritates me. It's a really cool, flexible tool, but the thing that really irritates me a little bit is waiting for this thing to load every time you pop back in and out. All right, so first things first, what we want to do is add in, and it landed me here. So let me just show, let's go back to get into the form gallery or the form editor from scratch. So I select the form over here from the left, and then I go to layouts and I hit vertical, and then that gets me right here into this, I don't know what you call this, the form gallery. I'm gonna call it the form gallery. So in the form gallery, I can select all the fields that are a part of the list, and what we want to bring in, what do we have here? Created by, modified by, and modified. So that's modified by, created by, and then modified, right? And if they're in the wrong order, we can easily come, and when you select them, what it's doing is say these are the available ones that are not used in the form. If you select it, it would bring it up to the form and put a purple checkbox over there showing you that it's part of the form. If you want to get rid of the field, you just uncheck that box, and it actually removes it from the form, from the screen, and then it makes it available here as far as available options right here. So let me select those again: created by, modified by, and modified, right? And created by, modified by, and modified. So based on how I selected those, I think those are the orders it would be in. And it's kind of hard to see, right? So let's do our same little trick we did before. Let's click into our data card, and then on the label, make sure you're under the home screen, and then select the icon. Select the label, then the font color, and change it to white. And font color again, change it to white. And there's another text in there. And if you can't see, just go down here and zoom in. Use your scroll bar so where you can see things. There's the other one to white, right? Now here on our sample, we don't have these white bounding boxes, so let's get rid of those. You can't get rid of them, but basically what you do is turn the color off for them. So to turn the color off for you, make sure you have the field selected, right? Remember, you have the label. Let's go through it again. I just want to go through this hierarchy again, because once you understand the hierarchy and what you can and cannot do, you can really create some fancy forms. So you have the data card, then within the data card you have the label, and then within the label you have the field value, right? So here I have the field value selected. I need to turn that white background off. I'm gonna make it transparent. That's the RGB there. So now I'm gonna make that transparent. I'm gonna do the same for this guy here. Make it transparent, right? And once I do that, I don't have enough contrast to actually read the text. And here's the one I was telling you about earlier in the video. Remember this A? This is going to give you to change the text color or the font color, and I'm gonna change that to white. And I'm gonna do the same for modify by. Select that, change that to white. All right, cool. So now that everything is visible, now I can kind of see this stuff. I'm gonna actually resize this guy, and because what I want to do is get all this on a single row, right? Just do something like that. Okay. So I'm resizing my label, bounding boxes, and then I come up here and resize the field bounding box, and then I'm able to drag and drop this into place. And this is going to be tricky. Like, you're going to have to, yeah, this is not that great. Let me see. So there's a systematic way to do this. If you select the label, go over here to size where it says width, just make it even 100. And I just picked that even 100 out of the blue, right? Because it's close to where I was at. But if you select them all to make them even 100, then what you can do is take this other field and kind of butt it up against it. And it may have been easier if I would have put the background, the screen background on here last, because then I will be able to see my gyne boxes and all that stuff a little bit easier. All right, so now I'm gonna go here, make this an even 100 as far as the width. And once that's set, I can butt that up against it. And now I know everything is well, these D's do look off, don't they? I know these are locked in the way they should. They should be, because that 100 is keeping me where I need to be, as long as I'm butted up against it. Right? Okay. So the other thing is, what else? Oh, this has like a darker shade, right? So this is where you go into your data card. You go to your field box, and we actually do a custom color, because with the custom color I can come up here and change the transparency value, right? And that really makes that pop, and it separates it from the form, because these are always going to be read only. So I'm going to select that 69 for that one, go into the field custom, and now I'm going to just type in 69, and then do the same for this last one. And I'm doing this at the card level, because the card level is always going to stretch out from side to side. That's the characteristics of a data card. It always stretches out from side to side. All right. Oops. All right. And now this is more towards the bottom, so I need to separate the form, these elements, from my read-only elements, or my audit elements. And the only way to do that, or I won't say the only way, but the easiest way to do that is to, and I'm just adjusting these to try to get rid of the seam. The easiest way to do that is to put a fake or empty data card inside the form. So let's go ahead and select the form. And these are all tips and tricks I've learned from watching other YouTube videos, and they come very in handy, they come in handy pretty good. So I click on the ellipse, hit the add custom card. That's going to always add it towards the end. So what I want to do is take this all the way above my created by, and that's going to create some spacing in between them. All right, so let me close that so I can see what I'm working with. And basically what I'm going to do is just stretch this out right before I get that scroll bar. You saw that scroll bar pop up? We don't need that. We don't want that. So just stretch it out till you get the scroll bar. And then another thing we want to do is stretch this down, which is going to push everything else down. All right, and then give this, probably stretch it down a little bit more. Give that image field some breathing room so you can see the image. All right, so that looks good. Let's kind of zoom out, kind of see what this thing looks like in perspective. Oh, I scrolled too much. See how I get this scroll bar? You don't want that double scroll bar. That's something you do not want, because when you're viewing this inside of SharePoint, just keep playing around with this until that scroll bar goes away. when you view this on SharePoint, it becomes a pain in the butt to with those double scroll bars, because you don't know where, it's just hard to navigate through when you have that. All right, so this is looking somewhat decent. Let's go ahead and push this back up to SharePoint. I think that background's a little bit too busy for my taste, but it's cool. And again, and that's useful, right? I mean, just a background image by itself can really make a form pop. And what you can do is start to leverage that to your advantage. Okay, so it looked like some of the changes we made did not come through. And the best way to ensure that is to hit refresh on the browser and then try it again. Sometimes it takes a while for those changes to come up. All right, so yeah, so that actually looks fancy. Looks fancy. All right. Man, I'm still struggling getting that image to fully show up. And that's one that doesn't have an image. All right. But yeah, so now if you hit edit, these become editable, right? And then if you hit new, you can create a new one without the image until we meet next time and figure out how to add images to that. But just like that, I mean, click, 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 click. You have a nice custom image for your form. You're still loading in data. I mean, this thing is still working as expected. And you can view this stuff, and it actually looks fantastic. All right. So that's it with this video. Definitely play around with it. You don't necessarily have to create an equipment list. Just any list to kind of give you at least six or seven fields to play with. Just play around with rearranging them. If one of them is a photo field, definitely try to position that in a way to really make the form pop. But that's it for this video. Give it a try. Reach out if there are any questions, and I'll see you in the next video. All right, take care.